For years, we believed that ADHD only existed in young boys. But actually now we know that we believed that because the research was only carried out on young boys.
Meet Claire, an Advanced ADHD Coach.
ADHDers live in fight or flight. We're always in survival mode, ready to react. ADHDers have become human doings. A lot of that is to do with productivity guilt as well.
I will cry over that probably every couple of days that I feel like I'm not doing enough.
Yeah, there's lots of people talking about how Instagram and Google is doing damage to it because there's so many people self-diagnosing. For me, a self-diagnosis is probably one of the most important parts. You don't identify this yourself, no one is going to tell you. We kind of go and land in our GP's offices hoping that we're going to get answers. And I meet a lot of people where their GP has said, don't be ridiculous. And they'll feel invalidated and they might not take it a step further. Time blindness is a thing that ADHDers have, right? We find it difficult. The way we used to speak about people with autism and ADHD is disgraceful. I would have had a lot of mental health struggles in my 20s and it was a different world back then. Shh, hide it away, Claire's not well. And I remember a couple of years later walking into a room, I think it was Aware, we're doing a workshop or something. And I'll never forget, I'm getting goosebumps now as I'm talking about it. I'll never forget the power of being in that room with people who knew what I was going through.
Before we start the episode, I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out to listen to these episodes. If you could take 2 seconds out of your day and hit the subscribe button, the bell, and give us a follow on whatever platform you're listening on so we can keep growing the podcast. Now let's get to the episode. Thanks so much for coming on, Claire.
Not at all, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So what do you do?
So I am a professional advanced ADHD coach. My background is social care and my own diagnosis of ADHD led me into wanting to work solely with ADHDers. And at the time, it was around 2019, 2020, the most extensive training that was being offered was for coaches at the time. So people assume GPs and psychotherapists and counsellors to know everything about ADHD. But they don't. It's not part of their training. Some people have told me that they only get about 5 hours training on neurodivergence in total. So I also chose coaching, Demi, because I'd experienced coaching. So when I got my diagnosis, it was 2015. And I'd done years of therapy before that because I had been swinging in and out of mental health issues and other diagnoses that I got. So like bipolar, manic depressive, recurrent depressive disorder, they never stuck, right? They never made sense. It never fixed anything. So eventually I got an ADHD diagnosis and I was met with a coach, or the idea of a coach was put to me. And I was like, what, like a basketball coach? It didn't make sense to me at the time. But it was transformative. She had ADHD herself and the coaching approach is really different. So don't get me wrong, I'm a huge advocate for therapy and I wouldn't be where I am without it. But coaching is about looking to the future. Coaching is about looking at where we are now. What information do we have now and what can we do with it? It's about getting to the places that we want to be, working on the things that aren't right for us. And that's really useful for ADHDers, especially people who've been late diagnosed because they have this brand new information and they're like, what the hell do I do with it? And particularly if people are working in corporate environments or if they're finding being a mom difficult, the coaching space is really good to assess, well, how do I need to do things? And then enables them to gives them permission to do it the way they need to do it, but also to advocate for how they need to do it.
Yeah, so I thought the medication would just sort all that out, but clearly it doesn't, don't know.
No, so there's a saying that says the skills don't teach the pill, or the pills don't teach the skills, right? So medication is a huge help, okay? It works with your neurotransmitters, okay? So what ADHD is recognized for is dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin, okay? So dopamine's a bit of a buzzword. I'm sure you've heard it before. It's the neurotransmitter that works with motivation, pleasure, and reward, okay? And in an ADHD brain, we experience that differently. Norepinephrine is responsible for alertness, memory, and concentration, okay? And that's imbalanced. Well, they say that that's imbalanced, okay? So I'm always waiting for new research to come out because what we thought about ADHD 20 years ago is no longer what we know, right? But at the moment, we know that norepinephrine is imbalanced. And this is probably why we move in and out of things where we can hyper focus and then can't pay attention to things at all. And that's usually around like the difference between having a passion or an interest in something and then having to do something because it's what we're supposed to do for our daily lives, like cooking or loading the dishwasher, or aspects of our job that we find really boring. Okay. So the pills and serotonin then is the happy hormone, right? It helps regulate emotions. It helps regulate sleep. The pills work with that. And for me, medication was a huge aid, especially Demi, because, and I see this a lot, especially with my female clients, majority of them have been on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication for years, and it never resolved the problem. Okay. So when I went on to my ADHD meds, it meant I could come off everything else that I was on, and I haven't needed it since. It created a balance for me. And my key takeaways from being on medication were, it helped me work with my impulsivity, right? My impulsive control. It allowed me to pay more attention in learning environments when I was reading, when I was having conversations with people in coffee shops and stuff, and helped me to regulate my emotions. So I would be a very emotional person. However, there's other things that we need to kind of unlearn and recreate new ways of doing, right? So if you think about how an ADHDer is usually born into maybe, and this sounds like Harry Potter speak, but like a neurotypical family, right? Or we're in a school system which is primarily neurotypical based. So a neurodivergent is being asked to learn how to do things according to a system that they don't have inside them. And we keep trying to repeat that because we, as humans, we repeat what we know because it's familiar and it's not working for us. So there are skills, right? There's deeper understanding we have to gain of ourselves. There's skills that we need to learn, and there's new ways of doing things that we need to figure out how we do that. And again, Demi, like everybody is so individual. Everyone is different. So it varies from person to person, and what the challenges are varies, and the level of those challenges varies. But unfortunately, the meds don't fix everything. I have heard other people say, and actually this was true for me too, I would have been really dysregulated with food. So like, when I noticed hunger cues, feeling hungry, eating regularly, that type of thing, the medication allows us to slow things down, to be more observant of things, to either eat more healthily and avoid, and you've probably heard a lot of women talking about like the binge eating that happens in the evening if we've gone all day without eating, and if we've not eaten enough. So the medication definitely does help with things like that for sure.
Yeah, I'm about to say that's so much to take in. I know. That's mad. No, you're okay. It's interesting. I've listened to, as I said to you earlier on, I don't want to turn around and say I have ADHD because I'm getting my results now on the 15th, and imagine I don't, because that'd be very embarrassing me going around saying that now. But it's like everyone around me is saying there's no way you don't have it, and all the signs. Like anytime I was struggling with focusing, I would be the one to have my laptop open and I have about 100 tabs open in front of me, and I can't, I'm like, it's like I started doing this thing where I have a little notebook sitting beside me and I'm trying to focus on a task, and if something else pops into my head, so I don't go and do it because I tend to do it. Yeah. I'll write it down. So I'm like, I have it there. I'm not going to forget it. I can do that later. Because the amount of times I will sit there, I'll open about 100 things on my tab, and I just get so frustrated, get so annoyed with myself, and I can't focus. And then my whole day passes and I'm like, I got barely anything done. I've started on about 100 different things. That would be signs definitely. Of it. Yeah. And what you've just shared there in relation to having that notepad beside yourself, that's you coming up with a strategy that works for you, right? So what usually happens when we're getting easily distracted, it's because the thing that we're not doing, or the thing that we wish we were doing, that we're your primary focus, it's not giving us enough dopamine. It's not giving us enough stimulation or challenge. Okay. And maybe the other thing appears bright and shiny. It's novel. It might be more exciting. It might get you up. So you mentioned, focusing on something on your tablet. It might mean that the other thing might get you away from that and give you a little bit of movement and stimulation. So that's really, really why we tend to get distracted from other things. Yeah. It's mad. That's, as you said, the movement part. I'll pick something like sorting out my whole room. Or I'll pick like, that's like, it's mad. Like, I feel like with the focusing, it's a really big one. And as that's what I was saying earlier on, like anything for me, it's the reason why I went and tried to get an assessment for ADHD, because I found like there were so many things that I was struggling with. And anytime I put it into YouTube and like was to try get help on certain things, like I was like, oh, what can help me to focus? I'd be looking at like, I'm sitting there trying to listen to like that lo-fi girl or classical music to try get me to like, because obviously I'm self-employed. Work is like one of the most important things for me. Like I need to get shit done. There's can't be not productive. So having to listen to all it, like watch videos, and I'm trying to like how to be more productive. I'll get into like a rabbit hole of looking at somebody else, and then they'll turn around and say the reason why I'm struggling with that was ADHD. And then I'm like, do I have it? And then there was like other things that I was looking up. What was it? I was struggling with the eating.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, and I didn't even realize. And I started looking, and I think I got so obsessive with. I was doing online coaching, and I was calorie counting, and I was putting everything in the yoke. But once I went over my calories, it was like, I've done it now. Have loads, and I'd be absolutely stuffed. My stomach would be hurting me, and I'm still eating, and I'm like, why can't I stop? And then I'd be putting into YouTube, I'm like, binge eating, what's going on? Why do I'd never done that before. And I went into a cycle of doing that really bad, and then I went into YouTube, I put in ADHD came up again, and I was just like, there's other things as well that I looked up, and all that was coming up for me. And then I was like, do you know what, fuck it. Like before that, when that was coming up, I was like saying to someone, I might go get the ADHD test done and see if I have it. But then other people would be turning around and be like, do you really want to take that medication and all? It's what, do you ever see on telly? People have this perception of the ADHD medication as it's what would be the most common one, Adderall.
So there's Adderall and Ritalin, right? And Adderall is very much American based drug. Primarily we're using Ritalin, Concerta and Vyvanse here. There's also a non-stimulant one called Strattera, right? And the ADHD medication has been in the media a lot lately because there's been shortages, right? And it's interesting to hear you say, you know, that you went to YouTube and were looking at other people and looking at what was challenging for you, and that eventually down that rabbit hole, it led you to there. Because, you know, like, I think that's great, right? There's lots of people talking about how, excuse me, how Instagram and Google is doing damage to it. Because there's so many people self-diagnosing, and because there's lots of misinformation, right? For me, a self-diagnosis, Demi, is the first part of the journey, and it's probably one of the most important parts, because if you don't identify it, you or anybody else, if you don't identify this yourself, no one is going to tell you, right? Like when a woman goes in to see her doctor to talk about hormonal issues, binge eating, menstruation issues, focusing, mood, no one ever says to them, have you ever thought about ADHD? It's one of the last things that they get asked about. And it's not always each individual's fault, right? Because they're just not trained, right? But I think it's great that we have all that access to information and people have this awareness, okay? I think you're doing the right thing. Going and get an assessment is the only way you'll ever know, right? And knowing or not knowing, right? It doesn't matter what your answer is, because it means you know now, okay? And the way I look at it is, like, I will work with people, Demi, who identify, who don't have a diagnosis, or who don't have the funds to go get a diagnosis, or who don't have the patience to sit in a waiting list for 2 to 4 years, right? And we work on the challenges, we work on the things that are coming up for them, you know? And just to bring it back to the binge eating, that's what I was talking about, like not being aware of our hunger cues, right? Not being aware of when we're hungry, and then taking the time to eat. So for me, Demi, like when I worked in social care and I was in services, I might finally get stuck into something, right? Like a report I was writing, or research in something for a case I was working on. And it might take me a long time to get engaged. So therefore it'll spill over into my lunchtime, because I was like, no, I don't want to leave this. I've finally gotten focused on it, right? So then it means I'm skipping my hunger cues, right? Which means then, say 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, I'd start to eventually get a pang again. And at that point, I wouldn't have time to take a lunch break. So I would be eating shit food, right? I'd be eating
picking while you're working.
Exactly. Yeah. It might be crisps, chocolate, granola bars, lots of high sugar, lots of high carb food. Okay. And then what happens then is I would come home from work, and this is quite regularly for a lot of my clients, but also, Demi, it depends on people's schedule and their responsibilities, right? But for me, I would come home from work and I wouldn't be hungry to eat dinner because I had just had a load of sugar and carbs at like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. So then you skip like your food interval then when you come home from work or whatever. And perhaps, you know, your energy drops, right? It can be really useful as well to notice, am I having a 3 o'clock slump? Am I having a 6 or 7 o'clock slump? So then, of course, then for a lot of people, they rest, right? They take to the phone to scroll, they watch Netflix, they sit in the couch, and they're recovering, right? They're recovering from the day that they've had. And then all of a sudden the body comes alive again and they need stimulation, they need hunger. So what are we going to do? We're going to eat quickly, and we're going to eat what we can access quickly, you know?
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. But then you feel like a lot of people will say that that's when they tend to pig out. Do you think, like, I feel like, did you hear people saying, you're on the spectrum? I feel like we're all a bit on the spectrum, aren't we?
So,
like, I feel like it's obviously becoming more common, people getting the diagnosis, but I feel like a lot more people should get the diagnosis done, and a lot more people than we even know probably have all these things.
There's people out there, Demi, who believe that, and I wouldn't not believe in this, but that neurodivergent people are going to take up half the population, right? So for so long, Demi, neurodivergence has been othered, right? It's been put in this black box, it's been shamed, it's been stigmatized. And that also adds to that thing that you were talking about the meds being kind of blacklisted, right?
Yeah.
And now we know, because of like Instagram and TikTok, and people coming out and people being empowered to speak about their experiences, about their lifestyles, about how they function. We now know that it's so much more regular, okay? The language is changing a lot, Demi, right? People are moving away from using the word spectrum and Asperger's, right? We're using autistic, even ADHD, actually. They used to phrase it ADD and ADHD. And now we just have ADHD with 3 subtypes, right? So there's the hyperactive subtype, there's the inattentive subtype, and then there's a combined subtype. So I'm combined, right? I have both, which is very interesting, right? So hyperactive is external, lots of energy, seeking stimulation, gets bored easily from things that are kind of lower stimulation. And then inattentive would be where we kind of zone out a bit more. We have difficulty paying attention in certain environments. Hyperactive also has the impulsivity piece, and like finishing other people's sentences, talking really quickly, so we're learning more about it all the time, right? But in relation to what you're saying, yeah, it's so common. And that's what we're starting to realize now. It's not this illness. It's not this thing that's to be shamed about. It's just the way people function, right? Yeah. We function differently. And that varies across people within each label or category they're in, whether it's autism or ADHD. No 2 ADHDers are the same. If you've met one ADHDer, you've met one ADHDer, right? Like you and I, if you get a diagnosis, you and I will need to do things differently and will experience different levels of challenge in the different areas. And that also varies across gender, and it varies across age groups, and it varies across lifestyles. And it varies for women with their hormonal cycles, right? So estrogen is a thing that really it's a hormone that allows our brain to function properly. And that fluctuates for us when we're, moving through the month. And when it lowers, women's symptoms of ADHD tend to, and also symptoms of PMS or PMDD, they tend to be more heightened, And like when you start to become aware of it, Demi, and you start to learn what it is, you can't unsee that. So you see things in other people.
Do you know, when you say that now, I started, because I was like, do you know what, this is a lot of money. I want to do my own research as much as I can. I started watching loads of podcasts. On ADHD. Then I was like, do I really want to take the medication? I was like thinking this is so dangerous and stuff like that. And I done so much research on it. My friend came in to me the week after, and she definitely has some sort of it. I'm not even messing. And she walked in. She'll be one of them that'll come into my house, change, and she's in my room for about 20 minutes. She'll have a shower. She'll change. And somehow she's gone to the pictures then after, like. And she'll go into my kitchen, she's wandering, she's like, what's in your fridge? She'll go in, have a look out the back garden. She's like, I've never been in your back garden. And she'll just walk out, and I'm like, I was literally looking at her, and I was like, cause it was literally all that week, I was like, she definitely has ADHD.
Yeah.
And then I said it to her like the week after, and she was like, Demi, I'm not even messing. I was thinking of getting the thing now.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, cause I was like, I'm after doing so much research. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you have that. But it's mad.
It is mad. Like, they often say that us neurodivergent people will flock together. We find our tribe, right? We find people that we connect with. And, you know, I feel, Demi, like I have it stamped on my forehead because now it's my job, right? But so it's something I've been quite openly talking about with people in my family and my friends for a long time. But when I kind of took to Instagram and started talking about it, and that was a scary thing to do as well for me, but people started coming, people started replying, people I've known for years going, I see that in me too, you know? And I think it's great. I think when you talk about it, that's when you're creating more awareness, you're increasing the education. I think that's important. But just, you reminded me there of something you said earlier when you were saying about changing your room around. Demi, when I was a little girl, like my room never stayed the same for more than a week. I was always moving it around, always restructuring it, always changing the colour on the walls. And actually, like, me and my two friends, like, we'd be hanging around, and we had this group of lads that we hung around with, and when they'd go play golf or football, you know, instead of doing girly things like dancing to music or plaiting her hair or, you know, learning about makeup, I'd be like, let's go clean your room, because she was the complete opposite to me. And her room was really messy and disorganized. And I'm the type of ADHDer who likes organization. I learned very early on that when I know where everything is and when everything is structured for me, it reduces the anxiety of trying to find things, of being late. So it became something that I was really good at, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting stuck in and organizing and tidying things. Like, you should see my office. And my clients talk about it all the time. They're like, oh my God, I can't be coached by you. You're perfect. And I'm like, no, that's still related to my ADHD. It's a coping mechanism that I created when I was a child. But anyway, I used to love going in to clean her room. Like, what kind of a 12-year-old loves that, you know?
But when you say that, yeah, like I will have like spells where I'm like, I wouldn't be like real tidy. Like, there's about 100 things in my bag.
Oh yeah.
And then there's my wardrobe. Like, after a certain amount of time, it'll get messy. Mm-hmm. But then it'll come to a stage where it's that bad, and I decide to do it at like 8 p.m. at night. Yeah. I sent a picture to my friend before, and I didn't actually, you know, like, just looking through my wardrobe and being like, I'll throw that out. I fucked everything out of my wardrobe. My whole bed, my floor. My man all walked in and was like, what are you doing? And it was like, I think it was like 8 o'clock. She was like, you're not going to get that done.
Yeah.
Sent it to my friend, and she was like, you're mad. Like, go to bed. I think it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had to finish it. Yeah. I was like, I had to get this done before I went to bed. Yeah. I was like, what am I doing?
There's loads of variations, right? Like, my bag has a load of stuff in it. I would have a chair of doom. Excuse me, a chair of doom, where like my clothes that I take off that night get put there, and then the next day it happens, and the next day it happens. I would have areas that are messy. Nothing is perfect. My kitchen presses aren't great. Messy and organized to me in my head are two different things, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And for me, cleaning. So cleaning is like, it's not like I like things to be clean, but I find cleaning really difficult. Like, for a long time, I had a cleaner. She came in twice a month because it just reduced that stress for me, right? And ironing, things like ironing. And people keep saying to me, would you not just buy clothes that you don't have to iron? And I'm like, where are those clothes? Like, I never find them. So it's just different for everybody.
Yeah. Saying that now, I will never iron. Like, I'll never, like... Like, I just won't wear it. If it has to be ironed, it's getting put back.
Yeah.
Same. I'm like...
And what I did for that, Demi, was I have hundreds of tops, hundreds of jackets, hundreds of socks and underwear, because it means I never run out. It means that I have enough there to keep going if the ironing basket is full, you know?
Yeah. That's mad. So what would be like, for someone, if anyone's listening to this, maybe a cut or maybe the full episode, what would be the top... like things to notice in yourself or the other person, like signs for ADHD? Or
okay, the first thing I always say to people is, if you find certain things challenging, right, that's always a starting point. If things aren't coming easy to you, if you're noticing dips in your mood and your energy, that's always a good sign to start at and be like, right, what's going on here? Why is this difficult for me? Why is this challenging? In relation to ADHD specifically, as I mentioned earlier, there's like 3 subtypes, right? So for the hyperactive, losing my words, Demi, what did I call subtype? There we go. It's really about, excessive energy, probably having a difficulty going to sleep at night, but also still surviving on very little sleep. Speaking over people, finishing people's sentences, hyper-focusing, right? So hyper-focus is where we, particularly on the thing that we're really passionate about or interested in, we can spend hours and hours just there, right? Like when we get stuck into a project and it's giving us enough dopamine, we can fixate on it, right? Because we're getting something that we need from it. And in this hyper-focus space, Demi, it often means that we forget to go to the bathroom, we forget to eat, like we talked about earlier, we forget that we had an appointment in the dentist, we forget that we're supposed to meet our friend for dinner, everything else just goes to the wayside, okay? Inattentive then would be where we start to notice ourselves finding it really difficult to follow people's conversations. Okay. So holding our attention, retaining information, staying focused, particularly in environments, like classrooms or the workplace or meeting rooms or coffee shops. If we notice that we find it really hard to kind of sit still, stay engaged in the thing that we're supposed to be focusing on. Inattentives, like some people say women primarily are getting diagnosed with inattentive, but there's lots of combined and hyperactive women out there as well. But the inattentives would have been, especially for women, would have been diagnosed as daydreamers, right? Like spacing out, okay, especially in classrooms. And then combined, as I said, is a mixture of those, which is what I am. So sometimes I'm really focused and sometimes I'm not, There are some fantastic, I have one on my website, Demi, actually, on my blog. There's a blog called What is ADHD? And what I've done is I've highlighted some of the best online self-assessments, right? So they're self-assessment tools. They're not official diagnoses, but they are really useful for people who want to get a better insight into, is this me? And what I often say to people is, because sometimes, like what you said there, like people kind of said, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to try the meds? It can be really hard when you bring it to somebody and they're not a believer or they're not interested in exploring this with you. So if you do an online assessment, and some of these online assessments have been created by professionals, doctors working in the field, right? They're not just random questions. And, if you bring this information with you to either a parent or a friend or a partner or your GP, if you're going to your GP to start the assessment process, it can just act as a little support piece, a little bit of evidence to kind of back up your story into why you think that this is something that might be presenting in you.
Yeah, like when you're saying that about the GP, that's where I went first to say I think I might have ADHD. And he was Googling where for me to go. He couldn't even tell me where to go. I had to text Jen Healy and ask her. And she was like, there's a lot of people that actually do tests and they're not actually official. She was like, so be careful where you go. And she sent me, if anyone is interested in getting it done, it was ADHD Doc.
Yeah.
That's where I went. I'm like, I'm going off topic now. This is what I do. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that everyone's like, there's no way you don't have. Like, I'm talking to my fella and I'm like, I'll go saying about, like, say, the horse up the road there, like, and then I'll go talk about, like, what was on the telly yesterday, like, and the conversation, and I won't stop talking. I just keep yapping.
Yeah.
Like,
my partner points that out to me as well. Yeah. He loves it. He thinks it's, funny, interesting and entertaining. Yeah. And I'll catch him with a little giggle or a smile. And I'm like, I did it again, did I? Because we'll just move so quickly from one thing to the other. And often, Demi, we're really excitable. Like, we're really excited about what we're talking about. Yeah. But just bringing it back to what you said, because that's a really important point, and I'm really glad you raised that. I know Jen well. ADHD Doc is phenomenal. That's actually where I send people to. They've got a really good service where there's follow-up. Okay. A lot of people out there just take the person on, possibly after sitting on a waiting list for 2 years. They'll assess, write them a script for medication, and off they go. And it can be really scary. And your friends aren't right, like when they say to you, are you sure you want to do that? Do you know this? Because taking ADHD medication impacts us, right? There are side effects. Our body is ingesting something that it hasn't been used to for a long time. And it can be scary to manage those side effects on our own. And that's why I love ADHD Doc. There's a bit of back and forth. There's constant support. And the way they process it is great. They're not handing out ADHD diagnoses like lollipops, right? Like some people. And I think what's happened is there's been such an influx, Demi, of people because of education, because of social media, because of the pandemic, right? Like, so I set up my own business at the start of the pandemic, okay? And what I was finding, my business grew while ADHD was growing. And what I was finding was that adults in particular were, their structures, their systems, their routine, Demi, was taken away from them because of the pandemic. So they were all catapulted into their homes. Okay. That was one thing. And what they were realizing was, oh God, all these things that I used to do as a kid, it's coming back. Right. Because when we move into spaces that we love, that we're good at, some of those challenges tend to subside. The other reason is that children are now being diagnosed much earlier. And I've seen I've met a lot of parents who said, my kid got diagnosed, and in the room for the assessment, I realized that I was all those things too. And then, of course, all the influencers, all the people that are sharing their stories, we're getting a much clearer picture of what it is. And people have evidence. They have information about what it looks like. Because for years, now here's me going off topic. For years, Demi, we believed that ADHD only existed in young boys. Right. But actually now we know that we believed that because the research was only carried out on young boys. There was never any research carried out on men, and there was never any research carried out on any females.
Why is that?
It's just the way they did it back then. It's just limitations. Yeah. We know so much more about everything now, right? Like even people are challenging the theories and beliefs that we've had about mental health for years now. Recently, something came out to say, depression isn't a chemical imbalance. It's a lot to do with our environment. So there's lots of people now, because we have better services, better information, better materials. We're challenging things that we believed for a long time, right? I forgot what your main question was. Remind me.
Do you know what? I did as well. No.
So we were talking, you were talking about the assessment process.
Oh yeah, okay.
So normally people's first port of call, Demi, is to go to their GP, but they're not trained in it. And that's not their fault, that's just the system. But because we expect them to be trained in it, we kind of go and land in our GP's offices hoping that we're going to get answers. And I meet a lot of people, Demi, through my work, where their GP has said, don't be ridiculous. You don't have that. Or your child's sitting still, just there, they're fine. And that's kind of an old school kind of approach and reaction, right? And that is filtering out, but it's still there. And it's quite damaging to people because people will go, oh, okay. And they'll feel invalidated and they might not take it a step further. I love what your doctor did. Your doctor went, I don't know about this, so I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to look for services. And I think that's brilliant.
I think he went, I can't remember where he went to. I think it was like ADHD help or something. So he told me to email them and then they'll tell me where to go.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of like, I knew Jen, I had her on my podcast and she said she got diagnosed really late.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll just text her and see where to go. Because obviously she got the diagnosis done, which I'm happy that I knew someone. Saying that now, probably don't have it. I don't know yet. But
can I just say, right, what you've said there, that's so common. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I don't diagnose people officially. Okay. It's not part of my work. I get into like supporting people either with a diagnosis or if they identify it and we figure out what the hell we're going to do to make life easier so that they can reach their full potential. Okay. But I am very aware of signs and symptoms. Okay. And I tend not to use the word symptoms too much because I actually don't believe it's an illness. I think it's just a way of functioning. And I think it's a very beautiful way. And I think that when we learn who we are and how we need to do things and our environment can be molded into how we need to function, ADHDers can thrive. Demi, I meet so many ADHDers who are CEOs, business owners, people who have moms who have 5 kids and run houses and have a job. Like their ADHDers are incredible people. But you did it the right way, right? Word of mouth is usually a really good port of call to get, because lived experience makes a big difference, right? Someone's gone there. And actually that's something that's really helpful for me as an ADHDer. I don't know now if you'll identify with this, but I need to know what to expect. right? So like coming here today, I put it into Google a few days ago. I looked at the map so I could see what the building looked like, and I knew what I was landing to. I know the road. I've been here. I felt comfortable knowing what to expect. When we go into new environments, they can be a bit scary because we're not prepared, right? And because of our brain, our processing speed. Does that ever happen to you? Do you like to know what to expect?
Yeah, like I look everything up, like before. No, I wouldn't go into that detail of like, well, actually, maybe if I need to be somewhere on time, I will throw it into Google to see how long it's going to take me and try. Yeah. But I still managed to be late. Even me, fella said it to me the other day. I told him I'll be finished work at 5. I'll be at his at 5. We'll go to the gym or whatever. And it was 6 o'clock, and I was on the way back to his, and he was like, "What's the story there?" Like, he's messing. He was like, "What's the story there? I thought you were at mine at 5." Like, and he was like, "It's grand. I went on a run. I knew you wouldn't be here at 5."
And you see, that's love, and that's acceptance, and that's people working with us. Like, my partner would do things like that as well, and so would my friends. Like, time blindness is a thing that ADHDers have, right? We find it difficult to compute time, to understand how long things will take. And then, of course, as we were talking about earlier, if we get distracted by things, then it adds time onto things, you know? And for me, when I'm like finishing up with my day of work, there's a couple of things that I just love to get done, depending on my energy levels, that I just love to get done so it's ready for me in the next morning. So then that would mean that it might add on, it might add on another hour, you know, to like my work day. So the time thing is real.
Yeah, and I don't even like do it on purpose. Like, I
of course.
In my head, it's like, and that's what my friend that I was saying to her, you should probably get to that. She's always like that. You need to add an extra like half an hour with her as well. Like, you know, she's not going to be on time. Like, but, like it's, and obviously you don't mean to do it on purpose. Like, I'll organise my day and I have it in my calendar of every single, I'm so forgetful. I don't know. Do you be, like, I swear to God, I've everyone's birthdays in my calendar.
Yeah, same.
I've everyone's birthdays, I've every single appointment, I've everything, because I've this fear in my head of forgetting.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Well, especially with things like you mentioned there with birthdays. For me, people acknowledge my birthday. And I know how much that means to me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to do that for others, right? It's guilt. It's not embarrassment. Well, a lot of ADHDers do feel a bit of shame depending on what they've been through. I know I would have experienced a lot of shame going through school and in my early 20s and stuff. But we want to do for people what people do for us. And like, a lot of ADHDers also like to specialize things. We like to sparkleize things. We like to make a big deal for other people. But with things that require our brain, like, so memory, it's tricky, right? Our short-term memory isn't great. Our long-term memory is phenomenal. Like, if you asked me what happened to me on the 14th of the 1st, and that's actually my birthday, 1992, I'll be able to tell you, because when we have really strong experiences, like with positive emotions, also with negative emotions, like we kind of latch on to trauma a bit. ADHDers have a negativity bias. Negative emotions tend to be quite powerful. And because we've experienced them frequently, they're quite strong in our memory, right? In our long-term memory. And because of the issues with self-belief and self-esteem, we tend to go to the pieces that are worst of ourselves than best of ourselves first, if you get me. Yeah. But like that's another strategy that you've come up with to support yourself to do the things that you want to do, right?
Yeah, I'd feel terrible. Like, that's on like, obviously me friends and all that, I'd always make like put time and effort to text me and like remember everything. And I'm like, half the time I'm like, are they putting in their calendar? I'm like, how is their memory so good?
I know.
Like, remember like just asking like stupid things like that you would have said ages ago, and they're like, oh, how was that? And you're like, you remember? Like, because I'd forget.
I know.
So you'd want to do the same thing. Like, I feel so bad if I forgot someone's birthday. I don't know what it is. I just feel terrible.
No, so do I.
Or like something so important to the other person.
Yeah. So do I. Like, a lot of my friends are married now, and I've been terrible at remembering wedding anniversaries. Just terrible. I have the birthdays in, but they know me. And I've had a conversation about it, and we can let the wedding anniversary thing slide, you know. But the birthday thing, I have a reminder. I get a beep every day it's someone's birthday, and I know then to go in and send a message. And I feel great for having done that.
Yeah. I think I was going to ask you something and I got a brain fog there. It just disappeared.
Yeah, that happens to me a lot. Like when I'm giving talks in schools or in workplaces and stuff. And I do this as a piece to like support myself. I'll openly start with, I'm ADHD. I'm going to forget what I'm saying and I'm going to lose my words. And it just gives me permission. Like what we've just done here today, right? Makes it okay.
And it's meant to be funny when it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it doesn't make it awkward or embarrassing for you. You're letting them know what to expect. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And often people in the audience can go, the last thing you said was dopamine, you know, and I'm like, oh yeah, thanks very much. And we move on. It's brilliant. Like, and I think it's important as well. And you've just demonstrated that too. When we do things like that, we're giving other people permission to do it. Right? Because there's a lot of masking that happens for ADHDers. And masking is exhausting, Demi, and it leads to burnout. And burnout can appear like depression. Burnout can keep us in the bed. It can play havoc with our emotions. And it's not a nice place to be in. I've been there a few times. It's tough, right? So when we give ourselves permission and when we create space for us to be who we are, everyone else just can like it or lump it, right? And the people who tend to have a problem with it, I feel like it's just fear and misunderstanding and uneducated.
They don't get it, That's all I do, like with the not texting someone about their or forgetting stuff. Yeah. I do feel like I'm not like, only the other day I was like thinking, I feel like I'm not like a really good friend because I don't remember all these details. Like one of my friends, she actually listens to all these podcasts. She's actually very good, Maria. She will remember absolutely everything about you. Like she'll just ask you and you're like, oh, like you actually remembered like stupid things. And I'm like, I want to be like that. Like she's so caring and just remembering all these little details. And I'm like, I actually feel like writing a little reminder on absolutely everything in me notes or whatever, or reminders on your phone.
I do that for certain things. Like I have a lot of friends in the US. So because my coach training was in the US and I go over every year for a big ADHD conference and I'm connected with a lot of other coaches, like coaching is only starting to take off in Ireland. So I have to put their names and the state where they're from and the time zone that they're in my Google Keep app because I forget all the time. I forget all of the time. And when I'm texting them or trying to arrange a Zoom or even just in like a group chat and we're in conversations, I'm like, why don't I know where they're from? Like, that's really embarrassing. Yeah.
I'm like that with people's names. I feel like I'm being ignorant and rude. And then I'm like, I don't mean to do it on purpose. I would forget my name. Like half the time.
Yeah. Has it ever happened to you where, and actually, sorry, now I'm interrupting. I'm speaking over you there. That's such an ADHD thing.
Swear to God, I have a reel that went viral on TikTok, right? And it's everyone giving out to me about interrupting someone. And when you were saying that, I was just like, is that signs of it? But I didn't mean to. I was just, when you're in a conversation, you're just bouncing back off each other. Yeah. And that's how one of the girls that makes the cuts in here, she was just like, I don't think that was rude at all. You were just having a conversation. But I was like, now every time I do it, I'm like, oh, fuck.
So aware of it. Yeah. What was I going to say before I apologise for interrupting? What was the last thing you said?
About the names.
Has it ever happened to you where you're like walking around? So Ashburn, where I grew up, was a little village. And we'd be up in the village, going to the shops or going out for a drink. And I might have someone, so because I went to school in Dublin, I might have people over who wouldn't know anybody in Ashburn, right? And we'd be going up and I'd see someone, they'd be like, oh, hey, Claire, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, so this is my friend, Maeve. And I'd be like, and this is like, and I know this person for years and I just can't remember their name.
I'll just try to say any other sentence that I do not have to say their name, hoping that they're
But I'm really good at faces.
That's literally like, I need to see their face when someone's like, oh, do you know that person? I'm like, no.
Someone will have served me in like an ice cream in a shop like 10 years ago and I'll never forget their face. Like it's so weird. I'll know that I met them before. It's freaky. But names, can't do it.
I'm like, is that everyone or is that just...
No, it's an ADHD thing for sure.
Yeah, it's mad. That's what I went to TikTok to look for. I went to everywhere. When I started to go doing research, I was like, that's me. That's me. And then when I went to TikTok, so there was like people making videos of like different things.
It's been very helpful. Hasn't it?
Yeah. TikTok is like the new Google.
I know. A lot of like professionals are saying, and I mean, but my belief is that this is the same with everything. There's a lot of misinformation everywhere, right? But I think TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, there's a few influencers I know who are on Twitter based, or well, it's not Twitter anymore, it's X, isn't it? See, I can't get used to that. It'll always be Twitter for me. I can't move to X because I've developed like a neural pathway around this name, and that's what it'll be. It's mad. But social media gave people the platform to be like, this is who I am, you know? And I think that has taken a lot away from the stigma and the shame attached to the othering, right? And it's really empowering. And the amount of people, even like, so I don't have a massive Instagram. I'm not great at keeping it consistently. So consistency is a thing that's problematic with me.
I get that as well. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
So, but people will say, I saw this in your video and it meant something. It made me see myself. And I remember, Demi, like, so as I mentioned, I think I mentioned this, I would have had a lot of mental health struggles in my 20s. And it was a different world back then. Shh, you know, don't tell the neighbours, like, hide it away. Claire's not well. Like, we weren't talking about it.
Because you had ADHD?
Well, I didn't know I had ADHD at the time. Yeah. I had depression and severe anxiety. And it was real hush hush. It was back in 2005, 2006, right? And I remember a couple of years later walking into a room, I think it was like Aware, we're doing a workshop or something. And I'll never forget, I'm getting goosebumps now as I'm talking about it. Demi, I'll never forget the power of being in that room with people who knew what I was going through, right? With people who I could identify with. And that's what Instagram and TikTok is doing for people, right? And a lot of the people that I meet, Demi, they've had years of trauma. Years, especially people who are in their adulthood. Like I once met a grandmother. She
only got diagnosed at that age
because her grandkids were being diagnosed. And there's huge grief that comes with that, because especially for women, again, not everybody, right? Not everyone has the same path, but certainly for me and for a lot of people, there was a lot of pain. A lot of toxic relationships, a lot of putting up with crap from people, bad, negative work environments, constant struggle, never reaching your full potential, knowing that you have this gift or this strength that you want to share, but you just can't get there because you're not confident enough. Lots of self-esteem stuff, not valuing yourself, not placing yourself first, not prioritizing yourself. And for people, Demi, when they come to a diagnosis, for some it's a huge relief. For others, it's grief, because it's like, what would have been different?
How if I got an earlier diagnosis? Yeah.
How could that have made an impact on me? Where would I be now? Like, I even have had lots of missed opportunities, things I said no to because I was afraid, things I couldn't go to because I went into depressive episodes. You know, like my Leaving Cert results, if they were, now I didn't do too badly, right? I got like 410 or something, but I wanted like 550, right?
What were you to do with the psychology?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
And I got into psychology through arts in the end, right? Through arts in Maynooth. But I was so overwhelmed, Demi, by by college and by the type of course that I started failing exams. So I didn't finish my psychology degree when I was left school first. And I ended up taking a year out. My college journey was the best. Like, I loved it. I played basketball. I had so many friends. I'm still in touch with people that I made there. I went to Maynooth. Maynooth is amazing, but it was really painful and really damaging. And I ended up in a really nasty relationship as well. That played massive, that had such a huge impact on my my experiences that followed after that. I had to do a lot of work on that, you know, and that's really common for women with ADHD, especially undiagnosed ADHD. So when they come to that place, it's like, oh God, now I know, now I have this thing that explains all that. I'm not broken. I'm not damaged. I'm not useless, right? I can do hard things. I am the things that I see myself that I just can't get started on or accelerated on. It's hugely transformational.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. If I get told that I don't have it, I'm like, I don't know where else to go, because I'm like, I feel like it's been so like tough. Like, I've been struggling with my mental health there the last while, and I just feel like I'm like, this is the only thing that will kind of give me, what's the word?
Relief. sense of self, understanding.
Yeah, understanding what's going on. Because I'm like, if it's not that, I don't know what it is. Because I'm like, I get so frustrated with myself that I can't focus. I actually sit there and cry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's like, and then when I say it, like, that's what I'm like, I'll start. I've been like having these little moments where I'm like crying. And like, I had a few little moments with me fella there, and he was just like, what are you stressing about? And I'm like, I just can't focus and get what I need done. And he's looking at me like I have 10 heads.
Yeah, I know. It's hard for people to understand if they don't.
Yeah.
They're not living it, you know?
Yeah, like it's like obviously I'm stressing so much about it because obviously probably because I work for myself, I have to I have to be able to concentrate and get it done.
Yeah,
it's not like I'm finished at 5 and then see you later. I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah, when you're self-employed, you're never not working, right? You're always. I am. I've got to always check things. It's hard, but excuse me, you know, the tears, like let them come. It's just like I'm a crier. I'm such a crier, and I always feel better after a good cry, right? First of all, actually, I just remembered one thing I want to say is that I'm here for you, right? So if you get your or you get your assessment and they tell you don't have ADHD, like, message me and we'll have a chat, okay? It's not the end of the world. It just means that's not the specific explanation. It doesn't mean that what you're experiencing challenges with is not real and that they don't exist. It just means that there's a different answer. Right. That's
because I'm like, where else do I, what do I, because I'm like, if they tell me that I don't, and I'm like, because I'm like, I feel like the way I am is obviously not normal. Like I had a girl in my course actually, and she kind of made a click for me because she was like, she has autism. Oh yeah. And you would never ever know. Like that's when she turned around and said that to me, and I was like, you've autism? And she's like, yeah. And then she'll tell me exactly what goes on in her mind, and and I'm like, is that not normal? I'm like, that's what I'd be like. And I just thought everyone's brains are like that. And that everyone struggles with all these things. And she's like, no, Demi, that's autism. And I was just like, and I think she has ADHD as well. Yeah. And I was just like, here. I was like, what do I have?
For years, Demi, they used to say that there was no way you could be diagnosed with ADHD and autism at the same time. Now we know that's not true. And in the same sense that our awareness and understanding of ADHD has changed, that has also happened for autism. And because no one human has the exact same blueprint as everyone else, it looks different in everybody else. And now we know that. There's huge growth in the autism community, huge empowerment, huge change of language. The way we used to speak about people with autism and ADHD is disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. It reminds me of and actually, I'll tell you a personal story. So when I got diagnosed, I was in St. Pat's Mental Health Hospital, right? That's where they had an ADHD hub, okay? It was like a clinic. So I went there, and it was 2016 because they were celebrating the 1916 Rising, okay? And there was all these graphics on the wall. I'm getting goosebumps again now, right? Because we used to call people who went into that hospital for respite, for support, we used to call them lunatics.
Yeah.
I mean, that's disgraceful, right? It's absolutely disgraceful. And now we just have this deeper meaning, right? And to bring it back to my story, sorry, there.
Okay, yeah.
I used to get called a lunatic by my ex. Okay, so
because you had. So what? You just have ADHD, as you don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, to be honest, sometimes I wonder. Have you ever heard of dyscalculia? So
I think that's all in my in a ADHD doc. It says on it that I'm getting tested for.
Oh, amazing.
Okay. Loads of stuff.
Yeah,
now I don't know
brilliant.
if it's because the test that I done. I'm like, how do you? Because it is. I think it's dyspraxia and stuff like
brilliant.
that.
Okay, so they've done a full proper assessment. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like, how can they do it all? And it was like a clicky thing. I had to look at the shapes, and it was it repeated shapes. Anytime it repeated, I had to press, and it got I don't know. There was two women behind me. I don't know if they were watching me and then looking at the test, because oh my god, I got so frustrated. I actually I wanted to turn around and tell them that I don't want to do it anymore. But I was like, just stick it out, and I was getting annoyed.
So I'm not laughing at you. I'm smiling with you, because that's exactly what happened to me. So when I got assessed, it was years ago, and we only did it for ADHD. But nowadays, it's great that people are assessing. They're looking at the full picture. Okay, what they were doing there was checking your response speed, your processing skills, and your recognition and awareness.
Because that's what I'm like. How can they test for so many things just from me clicking a thing? And the repetitive shapes. Like when I walked out, I got, oh my God, I was proper drained.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
I was like mad. I was like, how long is this going to go on for? I felt like it was on for ages, and I kept going like that with my foot and all.
Yeah,
I was like, yeah. And then the two women behind me, I was like, are they testing me? Like, can they see my foot rattling? And I was like, I need to stop. That's what was going through my head.
They were observing you and keeping an eye on your response to the test.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they did a clinical interview as well, right? Like you were asked questions.
Yeah, questions. Yeah.
It
was only a few questions. I was like, how can they tell from that?
Yeah.
It was mad.
Well, yeah, like the process is, but I mean, you're going back in, right?
Yeah. No, I don't know. I think it's just, I don't know if it's to tell me straight away if I have it or not, or they're going to do something else and then they'll tell me if I have it or not. And then the next step, I think I'm after paying €1,000 already. So with the next appointment, then the next step is if I need to see a psychiatrist, it's like another 200.
Yeah. So psychiatrist is the medication pathway, right?
All right. So I probably will have to pay that one.
Yeah. But you can choose, Demi, to not go down that path if you don't want to. Right?
I know. I'm like, it's gone that bad. I'm not even messing. I'm like, anything. I will take anything that will like help me focus and just feel, as you said, the relief of, and as you said it earlier on as well, like, I'm like, because obviously if I get told I have it, I will probably sit there and be like, if I got this when I was younger, I probably would have done much better in school. I would have, because that's what, as you said, sorry, I'm just going to silence this. I just said, and I've heard that already, that a lot of women get diagnosed late because they'd be the ones to be like mad, zone out, can't focus and stuff. I would have been the one that's kind of, I probably would have been much louder actually as well, thinking about it now. But then I would have been the one to be sitting there and my brain is just wandering and I'm like looking everywhere else.
When we were kids, Demi, like the things that presented or displayed ADHD, they excused away as characteristic traits. Oh, she's away with the fairies. Oh, she's in her own head. And then because we also, like, I don't know, and you don't have to get into it because this is obviously very public, but like I would have had a lot of emotional dysregulation. I'm a highly sensitive person, huge empathy for people. And before I knew this, I felt all the feelings for myself and I felt everyone else's feelings, and that was draining. I used to cry a lot. I used to be really sensitive to people's comments. Have you ever heard of rejection sensitivity dysphoria?
I think it rings a bell, but
okay, I'll come into that in a second. That's mind-blowing, right? But so when I became emotional, I was told I was just being hysterical or it was hormonal, right? Whereas it's not normal. Yes, women are more emotional when their hormones are fluctuating, but it doesn't explain everything, right? So as I said, the things that we possibly presented with were being excused away as characteristic traits, right? But also, Demi, we're fucking amazing. Excuse me for cursing. We're amazing, right? And women are particularly good at masking. So, and there's high expectations on women and girls. So we show up, we do what we're told, or we don't do what we're told, but we're still surviving in the environment. And like I say this all the time, ADHDers are so resilient, Demi, like year after year after year, day after day, they keep putting one foot in front of the other, despite how hard it's being, despite how they're being invalidated by people around them, by their workplaces, despite how exhausted they are. Because what happens to us, like those examples you gave me about, you know, your memory and your focusing challenges, we have to work harder. We have to work more than neurotypicals do to remember things, to pay attention, to get things done. And that takes up energy. It uses up energy. And then, like, so what do you like when you sleep? What's your sleep like?
I wouldn't, if I go to gym or exercise, then I'll be conked out. But then if I'm not, I could be wired.
Yeah.
My fella falls asleep like that. And I'm just like sitting there and then I'm like, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. And you get frustrated.
Yeah. Like that I can't just fall asleep. Like real quick.
That's pretty common for ADHD, right? For neurodivergence, right? There's this thing called bedtime revenge procrastination. Like if we feel like we haven't done enough during the day, it's going to be playing on our mind late at night. We might actually be still doing things. So it might, like I'll often say to clients, they'll be like, but I'm not sleepy at 10. And I'm like, well, what are you doing at 10? Oh, I'm cooking a dinner, or I'm moving my room around, or I'm cleaning my wardrobe. Of course, we're not going to feel sleepy, right? Yeah. But that, like, it's also very nervous system related, right? So, that like sympathetic, parasympathetic piece, like rest and digest versus fight or flight. I kind of believe that ADHDers live in fight or flight. Like we're always in survival mode, ready to react, ready to do. We're always doing. ADHDers have become human doings as opposed to human beings, right? And a lot of that is to do with productivity guilt as well. We feel like we haven't gotten enough done.
I swear to God, that's my, I will cry over that. Like, I don't even care that this is on camera. Probably every like couple of days that I feel like I'm not doing enough.
Yeah, it's real.
It's like, it's getting, that's why I'm just kind of like, I'm like, give me whatever I need to take. And that's, as you said, the mood fluctuation, I feel like it's getting worse. Like I could be like on top of the world one of the days, like sitting in my car and I'm like, oh, everything's great. And then another day I'm just like, I'm just pure depressed.
Yeah. And to me, that's because we're getting older and because our bodies are changing. Like the things that I was doing when I was in college in Maynooth that time, there's no way I'd be able to live like that now. Absolutely no way. But even when I lived like that back then, it nearly killed me. Like I would have had 3 or 4 pretty severe depressive episodes where I had to like check out. I had to tap out of life. I had to take time off. I had to rest. I had to quit work and quit college. Like it took me, Demi, 6 years to do a 3-year degree. Now I wear that like a badge of honor now. I'm so proud because I kept going back and I finished it and I saw it through, but it was tough. And I carried a lot of shame around that, Because
you felt like you were embarrassed to tell people. Yeah.
And I was like,
some people are going to be like, she's like, you do, obviously you're not, but I would be thinking, are people going to think I'm stupid?
Yeah. Demi, I believed I was unintelligent for years. Because so like my leaving cert, like middle ground, right? 410, but it wasn't what I wanted, right? And it wasn't what my friends got. And we're always being compared, right? As an ADHDer, we're always like, why can't you do it like Mary? Michelle's getting this grade. Anne does this, because we're always being compared because our baseline is different and our way of needing to do things is different, right? So I believed, like, there's a story, that I tell, right? I was in primary school, like 1st or 2nd class, and my teacher used to go around to everybody and ask us to read little paragraphs. Demi, I loved this. Claire stands up in the chair. Like I loved talking to people since I was a kid. Confident back then, right? And then went through a period of not being confident. But standing on the chair, reading out the paragraph, really dramatic, moving my hands, looking at people. And then the teacher would go, okay, Claire, what did Ben and Anne buy in the shops? And I'd be like, huh? What? I don't know, because I couldn't remember what I just read. Right?
Yeah, that happens to me.
Yeah.
Reading.
Maths as well, right? Sorry, to come back to reading. Like I have to read the sentence like 3 or 4 times before it lands. Yeah. Maths with me was interesting in school. Again, teacher used to bring us up to the blackboard to do sums, and everyone would go, oh, because they all know it would take me ages. Okay. So I'd go up, my uniform would be sticking to me. I'd be sweating out of snots because I was crying my eyes out, like floods of tears. Demi, this used to cause me great anxiety, right? When this happened in the classroom, I would be counting the heads ahead of me and then counting in my book to see which number maths I was going to be doing. And then I'd practice it so that I had it finished before I'd go up to the board. The worst thing was if I miscalculated or if someone went to go to the bathroom and they brought me sooner and then I'd start again, right? So they took me out of class to give me learning support. I went into a room with like 3 or 4 other people and a sub teacher or something. And I was only there for 2 weeks because they were like, this girl doesn't need to be here. She can do it just fine. And they put me back in the classroom, but the same problems occurred. So nobody realized back then, it wasn't that I couldn't do maths. It was that I had to do maths differently. I had to do school differently. I needed movement. I needed support, not pressure, right? So like the thing that will be said in the classroom is, okay, everybody, you've got 15 minutes to do sums 1 to 10. That's the worst thing for me.
Getting told you 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you feel like you've less.
Get that done in 15 minutes. What are you talking about? Right?
Yeah, you start panicking and then you can't focus.
No. And pressure and overwhelm, Demi, are 2 of the biggest things that shut the ADHD brain down. And one of the, just bringing myself back to something you said earlier, exercise allows you to sleep. Exercise is one of the key things that supports and activates an ADHD brain. Absolutely.
I feel like, that's the only time, like the other day, that was another reason, like I feel like I've been crying a lot, like the last while. But I don't really care saying it on this. But that was one of the other things. I started crying because I was like, only for an hour after the gym where my head is just clear. And it's not like, it's not racing. And it's like, it's mad. I'm like, why can't it be like that?
Yeah.
Why can't it be like that all the time?
Yeah.
It's like once you leave, then you're like, I'm in the car and I'm like, oh, this is lovely. Like, and then you go home, you start going back on your phone, you start thinking of everything else, and then it slowly just starts going.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm like, if I don't have it and they don't give me medication, I'm like, where else do I
know.
go?
Like I said, I know it's really, really hard. Like as I said, I meet people this happens to all the time. It's that imposter syndrome. It's that fear of, if it's not this, what is it? And what does it say about me if it's not this, right? So I know it's easier for me to say this, but try not to think about that, okay?
No, I'm just like, I'm at the fucking... That's why I'm like making it clear on this. I'm not saying I have it. In case I'm like this cunt that's gone around saying she has ADHD and she doesn't even have it.
I know.
Yeah.
But if you do get news that shocks you, just reach out and we'll have a chat, okay? And we'll figure out what else is next. But as I said, that's not uncommon. A lot of people I meet feel that before they go in. To be honest, Demi, and again, I haven't met everybody in the world. I don't think I know everything. I'm not a trained professional for diagnosing people, but I haven't met anybody who's gone for an assessment who's been told no.
All right, okay.
Right? Like this is... But
then you're thinking, did they just assess everyone? Just say, yeah, go on. There you go.
That was going to be my next comment. Right? That was going to be my next comment.
Pay for the medication there, will you?
Because that is what a non-believer would say. That is what someone who dismisses it would say.
Yeah.
I mean, you've just said to me there, this is what they made me do. I don't understand how that tells me. There are specific tests and requirements. Yes. Yeah. There are specific tests, specific requirements, specific things that they're looking at. Right? And unless it's, so you mentioned Jen and her saying there's a few people out there who are not official, not properly trained. And that's the same for coaching, Demi, and it's really damaging.
Same thing for counselling as well,
exactly.
I heard. Yeah. And you're going to stick what would you call it, a plaque?
Yeah,
on their door.
On the wall. Yeah.
And then actually
you can go and do a counselling course in a day and call yourself a counsellor. Yeah. So I'm always telling people, look for people's credentials. So
and qualifications.
The place that you're going to, they're all registered GPs and registered psychiatrists, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of talk about this, right? Like a lot of teachers that I might meet who might be anti-ADHD, but like, I'm just looking for an excuse.
I think would they be the older generation of teachers?
No. And I'm afraid to say that. Because
I'd be thinking that's just their way of thinking from being from an older generation.
So you're right in thinking that, but I've met young teachers who say the same.
Saying that now, like when I've said it to a few people before that, they're like I had someone turn around and be like, oh, you're just trying to diagnose yourself with everything. But I'm like, no, I'm just trying to look after my health.
I'm trying to look for an answer. I'm trying to look for an explanation. I'm trying to be healthier.
Yeah. Because I'm taking loads of supplements and stuff like that. And I'm just went to a nutritionist and I'm like getting all these things up. I'm like, if I can improve myself in any way, prolong my life, getting my VO2 done there.
Yeah, very nice. I want to do that actually.
Yeah, I had a fella, Sean Canan, from Health Matters.
Oh yeah. I saw that.
Yeah, that's all I'm like. And I'm trying to just work on myself because I feel like my mental health hasn't been good. Yeah. So I'm like, going to counselling and all. And it's just not normal for some people. They just think I'm just, it's just looking after myself. That's the way I'm looking at it. Like
the way I look at it for those people who are like alien to this is that it just hasn't landed on their doorstep yet, or they respond to things differently. They move through the world differently, right? Yeah. I think, so again, like coaching is, I call coaching and someone sitting in front of a coach doing the work, right? The experiences that we have, Demi, they imprint on us, whether it's negative or positive. The world and our experiences shape who we are. And sometimes we need to reshape them, right? And I think everything that you've said there, like I'm working with a food coach at the moment because I had some health stuff myself and it meant my routine and structure went out the window. So I'm starting again. And I'm exactly like you. If I go to the gym, oh my God, sleep like a baby. If I don't go to the gym, I have to consciously bring myself through a deregulation. I've got to do breath work. I've got to do yoga. Yeah. I've got to read my book. I've got to put my phone away. I've got to increase the melatonin. I've that sleepy mode. I've got to send my body messages. We're going to sleep now, right? And that's what I was saying earlier with the, clients will say to me, but I'm not sleepy at 10. And I'm like, okay, so what are you doing at 10? Oh, I'm cooking the dinner. I'm going out for a walk. Of course you're not sleepy because you're being active,
Yeah.
But doing the work is hard, Demi. It requires money. It requires time. It uses up energy, and we're going possibly looking at ourselves and looking at maybe painful things that happen to us. Not everybody does that. Not everybody does that. If everybody did that, we would be living in a different world right now.
Yeah, because I'm like, the amount of people that I've spoke to, obviously with the podcast, and the amount of podcasts I've listened to, that it's like, working on yourself is going to like obviously affect your kids. Working on yourself is going to affect your life, your success.
Yeah.
That's all. So I'm like, right now, I'm like, and obviously because my mental health hasn't been that great. I'm like, that's why I said, I was like, this year, that's my main priority, just to focus on that instead of just, because that's what I'd just jump into so many things, take so much on. And when you said about the impulse, and then I just can't do it, and then I'm getting stressed out, and then I can't get it done because I go into like so much pressure.
Yeah. Overwhelm. Overwhelm.
Yeah.
There's a quote I learned years ago. I can't remember who it's by, but they were saying, do the work so your kids don't have to. Yeah. Right. And if we think about like our parents' generation and the generation above them, like my parents' upbringing and the world that they grew up in was so much different from what I grew up in. And it's different again from what my nieces, like the world that my niece is growing up in. And we didn't talk about mental health, right? Yeah. We didn't talk about pain. We didn't tell the neighbours, because we wouldn't tell the neighbours if there was any problems. So everyone suffered in silence. And that's why we have such a traumatic history, right? Like
generational trauma. Yeah.
Generational trauma. Exactly. Yeah. And that has impacted me. It's impacted friends of mine, and it's impacted my clients.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's where you think all ADHD stems from, is obviously.
Yeah. Like, have you ever heard of Gabor Mate? No. Okay. So he's interesting, right? Controversial. So there's a lot of people.
I feel like everything's controversial.
I know.
You'll put up a picture of yourself, someone will be arguing with the 2 spots that there's on your face. I swear to God, social media is.
I know
it's something else, especially on TikTok.
Yeah.
What were you saying there? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. I completely agree with you. What was I saying? Oh yeah, controversial. So Gabor Mate, I love his work in relation to trauma and addiction. Okay, love it. He's moved into discussing ADHD, and not everybody agrees with it. And there's lots of like, are you for Mate, or there's another guy whose name is leaving my head because they're like polar opposite opinions. There is lots of what Gabor Mate says, though, that I relate to. I don't okay, so again, I'll eat my hat here because, or I won't definitely define it, because it could be changed again in another year or two with more research, right?
All studies, I feel like now it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I feel like things are just constantly changing now.
They are. And change is hard for people, Demi. Change is hard for neurodivergents. We just get it sorted and we figure it all out, and then it's moving again. And we're like, oh.
Yeah, that's like, I feel like with upskilling, with like, I do a lot of treatments with beauty therapy, and I'm like, I can't keep up with everything.
Yes.
I'll upskill in one treatment, and then, or like learn different things that obviously.
And then there's already another new way of doing it out.
Something else. And I'm like, I can't keep up with all of this.
Yeah. It's tough. But Gabor Mate talks about the link between ADHD and trauma. And I'm not so sure that I believe trauma causes ADHD, right? Some professionals would say that like the traits or the characteristics of ADHD and trauma can be very similar. Okay. But yes, ADHD can be linked to multi-generational trauma, and we had recent research to prove that it's hereditary and it's genetic. Okay. And actually, so there was this argument going on one day, and I was like, I left one comment, and I was like, I'm not even going to look at what they say back. I'm not going to get involved. But I went down a rabbit hole then, and I traced, and it's not just me who does this, loads of people do, but I traced like signs of ADHD way back to like BC, like Greek gods, right? They were talking about like people having difficulties concentrating like thousands of years ago. This isn't this new thing that's just come out because we're all using technology now, and also there's a book called a farmer in a hunter's world or something. I can't remember the name of it, but it's fascinating. And it's literally talking about like how the skills of an ADHDer is hunter skills. We needed those skills to become hunters, right? And how life has just evolved, how the workplace is, and we're changing again now. Like people are standing at their desks, they're not sitting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's evolving again, and that actually really works really well for neurodivergence. But what I can speak to is that I meet a lot of people who, particularly with late diagnosed ADHD, have experienced trauma.
Yeah.
I meet a lot of people who have experienced trauma because they were diagnosed earlier and there was no supports in their system. They got no accommodations. There was no understanding, depending on their age and their environment and stuff. And in relation to people experiencing trauma, I mean, for me, it was traumatic not to know I had ADHD for 28 years of my life.
Yeah.
I was trying to live as someone I wasn't, as someone else. That was traumatizing. Constantly trying to be something I'm not, constantly feeling like who I am, the essence of who I am wasn't good enough, and what I wasn't meant to be here. I didn't belong. That's traumatizing. It's really hurtful. It's really disappointing. And like I mentioned earlier, you know, toxic relationships, staying in workplaces that aren't the right spaces for us, things that accompany undiagnosed or mismanaged. When I say mismanaged ADHD, I mean people who haven't spent the time to understand themselves enough, haven't created strategies according to their neurodivergent needs, and they're still kind of following neurotypical ways, right? And it's not a put down or anything, because I was there when I didn't know, right? But when we're in that space, our boundaries are bad. Our self-worth is bad. We usually have high people-pleasing and perfectionist tendencies. And as I said earlier, we're often masking and overworking and doing too much and exhausting ourselves. And it means that it impacts our decisions, our choices, who we hang around with, what we eat, how we feel, how we spend our day, where we work. Like I'm on my third career now.
Are you?
Yeah.
So what was your first, your second, and now
I'm on my third, yeah. So when I first left college, well, actually in between one of the breaks, I got into fashion and I was working as a visual merchandiser. Okay. And I loved it. Do you remember the show The Hills?
Yeah.
It was like that, Demi. I thought I was the bee's knees. Like, I loved it. It was so glamorous. Company car, phone, traveling around different branches, dressing the windows. Yeah. That was for Next. I worked in BT too and in Brown Thomas for a bit as well. I moved into merchandising and buying, and then I worked for a few boutiques and I did like styling, press events, fashion shows, shop floor kind of layout and stuff like that, website work. I loved it, like, because it was novelty and variety, and I was obsessed with clothes, Demi. And when I got my diagnosis, that changed everything. I just left.
Why did that change everything?
There was something, I think, and actually I've never really discussed this in depthly, so thank you for that question. But I think there was something in fashion that gave me an identity, right? There was something that gave me the option as well to choose who I was and to move depending on, does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining that right. Like, you know, the way you can be so creative with your style and with what you wear, right? Yeah. And also the jobs that I had were all really creative too. And ADHDers are really creative, right? Like it makes total sense to me that you train other people, that you do very practical stuff, that you have this space here, that you're doing the podcast. Total sense, right? But what I felt was, I found it challenging because it was never enough. We were always chasing the next best thing. So if we met last week's target, it was, oh, great, well, we have to beat next week's target. Or, you know, we're Coach and they're Chanel, or, you know, we have to beat Chanel's target. You know, I just found it too competitive and not satisfying. And I also found it very bitchy, right? I'm a really loyal person. Loyalty is a big value of mine.
I'd be the same.
Yeah,
and honesty,
I pride myself in loyalty. And when people screw me over, Demi, it infuriates me. I don't understand it either. I'm like, why are you being nasty? Why are you being like that? And there was a lot of that, right? Retail and fashion, it's just cutthroat. It's just the environment. Now, I had the best time there. I did it for like 10 years and I learned a lot. But when I was kind of getting sick. I was in Brown Thomas towards the time before I got diagnosed, and I was in on around Christmas time, and this man came in with his wife and he was shouting at me because the wallet that he wanted, a wallet, right, a purse, was $3,000 and it didn't come in red. That's what he was shouting. Yeah, that's what he was shouting at me for,
People are
Demi.
just hilarious, aren't they?
It didn't even make, it wasn't us. It wasn't that we had it in stock. It didn't come in red. They didn't make it in red. And he was shouting at me. And I just went, oh, Claire, I just had this wake up call. It was a few weeks after I got my diagnosis. Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, I'm going to leave. And then another few days later, I had a married couple in and they were fighting in the shop because he bought her a necklace, again, like $5,000 that she didn't like. And because it was after Christmas, all the stock was sold, all the key pieces, all the signature pieces were gone, right? Because people were buying them for Christmas presents. And they came in and they threw a hissy fit because there was nothing for them to exchange it for, right? And they were just so rude, Demi. And like, so when I lived in Ashbourne, I used to come from the north side of the city and I'd get off like on just before O'Connell Bridge and I'd walk across and I would see these homeless people sitting on the bridges and I'd be like, you're in here giving out about €5,000 necklace because it's not going to be here for 2 weeks. And there are other people out there who have no houses. I was like, I'm sorry, this is
Did you say that to them?
No, I didn't. I would have been in big trouble.
All right, okay.
But that's how I felt, right? So I handed in my notice the next day, Demi, and I haven't looked back. Looked back. And I still like fashion. I'm really into yoga. I get really excited about buying, yoga clothes and crop tops and backless tops and all. And I still get excited about dressing because I work for myself. I work from home. I love getting dressed up and thinking about my outfits. But the environment that I left, I don't regret. And I know it works for loads of people and it's brilliant and I still use it as a service. But as we talked about earlier, I started off with psychology. When I went to college, I always knew I wanted to work with people. So I quit. I did a month. And then, Demi, I took to the bed for like 2 weeks. I was knackered and I just slept, right? I just slept for like 2 weeks. And to be honest, actually, upon reflection, it was probably a lot to do with getting diagnosed and processing that as well and being exhausted and being burnt out. But I was like, God, what can I do now? And I had just moved home. So I had broken up with someone that I was living with. I said to my parents, can I go back to college? Can I explore this? Can you support me for a bit? And they were like, yeah. So I went deadly. And I went and spoke with a few different people. I looked at different avenues and that's when I went into social care. I went and did some small, because I finished my degree with sociology and I'd already had a couple of other bits of training. And I went and did like early childhood education. And then I did a whole lot of training. And then I was in social care for a bit. And I remember, Demi, meeting people, right, at the start of my social care career. And they were like, after they got to know me and they knew that 6 months ago I was standing on a shop floor in Brown Thomas, they were like, what? Oh my God, are you okay? And Jesus, because all these people were coming in with really, traumatic lived experiences. We were doing great deep work, therapeutic work. Oh my God, are you okay? Can we get you support? And I was like, I'm fine. I just knew that this was where I was meant to be. Since getting in there, I've never had a problem with connecting with anybody, with understanding their story. I've loved that work. I believe in people rebuilding and recovering. And I loved it and I was good at it. And I was like, yeah, this is where I was meant to be. And then the pandemic came and I was working. I'd only just started working in a women's refuge, a domestic violence refuge. COVID hit. I got COVID and I was really ill. And I struggled with my health for about 3 years. I had long COVID.
Really? After COVID?
Yeah. And I found it really hard to get back to work. I kept making attempts and I kept having big flare-ups of all these crazy symptoms that nobody could describe.
What were the symptoms? So,
insane chronic fatigue, Demi. Like I cannot explain it. I would walk up the stairs and I don't live in a mansion. It's just not a 4-bed, but like a 2-story, right?
That's normal set of stairs. Yeah.
And I would be exhausted. I would be out of breath. I had the world's most horrific migraines, and I'd never suffered with migraines before. I had my legs, my joints, they would be in agony. I had excruciating pain. I had this weird shingles rash all over my hands, my torso, like incredibly painful to touch, lots of little bubbles. It was so strange. Ferocious cough, like constant cough, shortness of breath all the time. Heart palpitations, they're the ones I can think of at the minute. And like just the inability to talk to anybody, to look at a Zoom screen. And as I said, I made several attempts to get back to work and I just kept having flare-ups of these. I was in and out of hospital, like getting tests and looking at what was going on. And I realized I had met a lot of people who had chronic fatigue, ME, fibromyalgia. And I just learned, like you, I'm a researcher, and when something is not right, I'm going to go do something about it. And I realized that because nobody knew about COVID, how were they going to have a prognosis? How were they going to, they didn't know, right? So I decided, as I said, I had made several different attempts to get into work. And then eventually I quit that place that I was in. I went to a part-time job. That still didn't work, Demi. And then I just quit my job. I was 33 and I was...
How old are you now?
I'm 37 now.
Are you?
Yeah.
What? I was thinking you were in your like late 20s.
No, I'm 37. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Like, no fucking way.
Yeah, I'm 37.
How old are you again?
37.
No, that's
now
nice.
I don't feel like a 37-year-old, do you know, like because I've had so many bumps in my life. I'm probably not where I thought I would be at 37, but I was 33 when this happened and I had to quit my job, Demi, and it was so fucking scary again.
You're
sorry.
No, you're all right. I do it all the time. It's very bad.
There's nothing better than the F word. It just feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah. Sure. Before I started this podcast, my mom, my stepdad were like to me, now, Demi, like you do realise you cannot curse on this. And I was just like, I'm just going to be myself. I don't care.
Yeah. And like I've often gotten feedback from parents who'd say they were delighted because you cursed first, you know, because it's something that works for the people as well.
Yeah. I feel like it's in my vocabulary. I cannot get rid of it now. It's too late.
I know. Yeah. It's ingrained.
I do try not say it. Like, say if we're doing content and like I'm recording videos of me talking, I'll put, like, I notice I put this like posh voice on or something. Like, well, even then when people hear me, they're like, she's so common. Like, I'm from Coolock.
Yeah.
Like, that's only why. But it's too late to change it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, I made a decision to quit. Very scary. And I had started my coaching journey. So that was 2020. I started my coaching journey in 2019. And what I did was I took a few weeks off and I just slept, Demi. Like I've never spent as much time in my bed as I did during the pandemic. And not because I wanted to be there, but because I couldn't get out of it. And not because of mental health. It was horrific. But I believe that I made the right choice, because where I am now, I don't think I'd still be here. I don't think I'd be here if I had kept pushing through and kept yo-yoing in and out of sick leave. There are people who started the long COVID journey with me, and they're not where I am because they had different circumstances. Like they had mortgages, they had kids. I didn't have those things, right? I didn't have those responsibilities. I could take time out and listen to my body. So what I did was then I set up, well, initially it was called Internal Connections and now it's called ADHD Connections. And I took on like 2 or 3 clients and I just was really eased myself into it. And as I rested and paced and healed and I took all the supplements and all the weird herbs and leaves, all the concoctions, I went back to basics with breathing. I retrained my lungs. I did very slow yoga. I stopped the gym. I had to stop the gym because the gym was bringing on like what we call flare-ups or relapses. And eventually, like every time I had a relapse, the time between each relapse diminished and the severity of each relapse also diminished. And now I'm back at the gym, back doing yoga. I'm easing myself back into sea swimming. I go out on nights out. I'm drinking again. I'm so like, it's brilliant, right? And so my third career gave me the opportunity to heal and recover. because I was managing my own schedule. I could decide how many clients I took on at a time. And as I got better, Demi, like with my health, I increased the amount of clients that I could take on, and it's grown now, and now I do workshops and talks. Like I'm going into schools and workplaces, challenging people who don't believe in ADHD, and they leave them with a changed mind. Like, I love that I get to do that. And people come up to me and they're like, I have ADHD too. Like, it's the most powerful, it's the most amazing feeling in the world, So I feel so privileged. And I believe that my diagnosis, my journey to finding out I had ADHD played a huge role in me being able to say, no, I need to do nothing. I need to step out of this world right now, because I don't think I'd have been able to advocate for myself. And I think I'd be much sicker. Like, I met people at the start of my long COVID journey who told me, do not push through this. Athletes that I knew who are in bed, who are in wheelchairs.
After COVID?
Yeah, not just COVID, but weird viruses that they've contracted over the years, right? So the term is long COVID because that's what advocates and activists created. But illness after a virus is not new. Right. We've had lots of people for years having severe reactions, their body being completely drained and destroyed by weird viruses. Okay. So there were people I'd met who'd been triathletes, swimmers, runners, people who were CEOs of company, and they're in bed. And the best news that the best advice, that's another thing that ADHDers do. We sometimes say the wrong words when we mean something else. Do you ever see that? Yeah. So, they told me, give yourself 2 years, Claire, of doing nothing and you will recover from this. They were like, I know that's really hard. And I remember telling my friends 2 years.
Saying 2 years.
I know, it's very terrifying, right? It's very terrifying. But I did it. I quit my job. And I was lucky, right? Because I had this training that I could utilize. I could set up my own private practice, right? Like, I know people who were guards and nurses and teachers. It wasn't easy for them to do it, or admin in hospitals and healthcare workers. It wasn't easy to do that, right? To do it like that. But I know people who aren't back to work yet. So I feel very privileged, very grateful for where I am. But like I said, my ADHD helped me to achieve that, because I had gotten the diagnosis. I understood myself. I had to go through a process of learning how to advocate for myself, my confidence, my self-esteem, my self-worth. That was through the roof, like 150%. And I had these doctors telling me about long COVID. It's all in your head, slipping me scripts for antidepressants, across the table without saying anything. Oh, how's your mood? Like, it was real weird. 1920s. Shh, I felt like I would have been locked up if it was like 100 or 1,000 years ago, because what I was saying was alien to them and they didn't believe me. And then sure enough, then like there was this outpour of other people who were also experiencing the same symptoms as me. And I really believe that if I hadn't ADHD and if I didn't know myself, that I probably wouldn't have advocated for myself the way that I did and took that time out.
Yeah. Thanks so much. That was such a, like, we could talk here for another 2 hours probably.
No,
but
I'm such a talker.
No, I'm the same. I don't shut up. Literally, that was me all over yesterday, just yapping. And if it goes silent, I just have to say something else. Anything that goes through my head, I have to tell you. Everyone knows.
Yeah.
There's no thought that nobody doesn't know what I'm actually thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much for coming
not
on.
At all. It was lovely to chat to you.
If anyone is looking to reach out, where can they find you?
My Instagram is at ADHD Connections. My website is www.adhdconnections.ie. And just to reiterate, the blog piece is called What is ADHD? And there's the assessments there. If anybody is thinking, is this me? Carry out those assessments and then go speak to a GP or get yourself into an assessment service.
Amazing. Thanks so much for coming on, Claire.
Thanks a mil, Demi.
Thanks so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. If you're looking to reach out, make sure you follow us on Unlock Potential Podcast on Instagram and Demi's Nails and Beauty. See you next time.